Inherited a home and found out that there's someone already living in it. Maybe this is something simple like you inherited a rental and you understood that there are people living there, but you didn't know what the terms were, what the lease was, or what the situation is. Or maybe it's even more complicated and you have a family member, a friend, or a relative who just needed a little more time to get back on their feet. This can be one of the most awkward, emotional, and triggering situations that people face when they inherit homes. I help families who inherit homes create clarity in their options and their path forward so that they have an empowering future. In this situation, yeah, it's a tricky one. So let's break it down so that you understand what your options are, what you can do, and to keep you and everyone at as much peace as possible through this. When you find out that someone's living there, if it's unexpected or maybe there's some terms of it that you're not cool with personally, you need to keep in mind that they had an agreement with your parents, your loved one, whoever owned the house that they were living in. And it's important to understand the situation. Is there a written lease? What are the terms of that lease? And if it's just a handshake deal, what's their understanding of that? That's going to be even harder because, well, it's impossible to know what your parents or loved one actually said to the person living there and what agreement they had. The thing that you have to rely on is what the person who's living there has to say and what the terms are that they share with you. You got to come from understanding, because if you go off half-cocked and get in a fight with someone, it's going to make resolving the issue that much harder going forward. For some people that were living there that were family members or friends, or maybe as someone that your parents even hired to help them in their final times on earth. Sometimes when that caregiver is threatened with getting kicked out, they feel entitled, like they have a right to live there more because they turn their life upside down just to stay longer. So it's important to approach the situation with grace. The second most important thing is to understand that just because you inherited a property does not mean that all of the tenant rights go away. It doesn't mean that the lease died with your loved one. Unfortunately, you inherited a lease, so you need to honor that as well. It's important to understand what the contents of that lease are, and if you decide to move into the home, renovate it, or sell, understand how those items affect your ability to do that with the property. In certain areas like San Diego City and Oceanside City, there are just cause ordinances that can limit your ability to move in quickly and have different requirements for giving notice to the tenant. So it's important to reach out so that you understand what the right things are to do. Oftentimes a realtor like myself who's versed in tenant law, who's versed in tenant rights, and also your estate planning attorney could be a great resource for understanding how to give proper notice when you want to do a major remodel, or if you yourself want to move into the home. Oftentimes, if you want to sell, you're going to need to sell the home with the lease in place. That may involve selling to an investor, just because depending on the market, at certain times that are more buyer's markets, people don't want to take on leases that don't make sense. For example, an elderly person may have been renting out a home for 20, 30 years to the same family that they absolutely adore. And they may have given them a sweetheart deal, charging a quarter or a third of what market rent is. Now, while that's great and all, and that the family that lives there are amazing people, it's hard for a new owner to want to buy that and continue those lease terms. So it makes the home less valuable. If a home's worth $1 million, even if they don't have to get a mortgage on that, and the tenant is only paying a quarter of market's rent, it doesn't make sense as an investment. So that will lower the value of the home. Whereas if it's a strong seller's market, you may see buyers that are willing to take on those tenants even if the terms aren't that great and just finish out the lease and then not renew the lease. This is where tenants are most vulnerable. You may have a great relationship with your long-term landlord, but if they die and their family doesn't want to continue your lease when it ends, your options are very limited. Now let's touch on really quick if that tenant is a relative or a family friend. You need to understand that this is emotional. And then if that person or yourself had a caregiver role with your loved one, They could easily be triggered by any of this talk because they immediately feel threatened. They may feel like they need their time to process the whole situation and process their grief before moving out. Losing a friend, a family member, and your home all in once is a huge, monumental, stressful event. So it's important to come with peace and compassion and understanding before anything else. And if you do this, it'll make things easier in the long run. If I had to channel Ryan Leake, who helps people deal with challenging people, he would probably tell us first to ask, not assume. Say something like, hey, I understand that you're living here. Help me understand the agreement that you had with the person who was the landlord. What was your agreement? How did you pay him? Do you have a copy of the agreement, or was it just a handshake deal? Come from understanding. If you help people feel understood and know that you're trying to understand their perspective, it helps calm the situation immensely. But if you come out the gate triggered and annoyed and upset, it just comes off combative. And the easiest way to share with them that you've heard them is to reflect back what they said. Share that you understand them. And also share something like, hey, I understand that you lived here for 6 years, that your agreement was this, and suddenly this person's gone. And now everything feels like it's up in the air and nothing feels certain while you're in the midst of grief. And thank them for sharing that. You want them to open the communication, you want them to share. And to do that, ask them more. Be there. Take your own reactions and your own thoughts and allow them to digest within you. If you take the time to understand and you resist the urge to just be triggered and reactionary, you'll understand that a lot of the things that trigger you and cause you to react will actually subside. At this point, you can set boundaries, but the boundaries that you set aren't just rules for them to follow. You have to follow it too. You can say things like, no sighing. No eye rolling. No, you should have known. You got to understand between each other that there are many things that you may have heard differently from your loved one that's passed than the person who's sharing them with you. So you should have known, which is the most common thing that people are saying when they fight with relatives, isn't helping anyone. If you're the successor trustee, the personal representative, and that's where you say something like, hey, I'm responsible for the property at this point. So I need to get clarity on your living situation so that we can move forward in a peaceful and proactive way. Here's where we break down the options. And if the broader family's making a choice in disagreement with this person, we still need to make them feel empowered and part of that choice to get their buy-in for the choice that the family at large is making. Everyone needs to feel recognized and supportive. At this point, you can say, hey, here are the options that we have. Option 1, stay as a tenant, but create a formal written lease so that everyone's safe and protected. Option 2, we can create a cash for keys situation with a specific timeline for moving out. What cash for keys looks like is you would receive X amount of dollars for breaking your lease early and moving out easily so that the estate can close without you present. If they're a beneficiary of the estate, this may be more appealing because they could stand to inherit more than selling a home with a tenant in place with a below market lease or a handshake deal. Option number 3 leans into that back end of what I just said. We can sell the home with you as the tenant. It will likely be to an investor if the lease is below market rate. And at that point, the investor likely will not be paying as much for the home. The point is, we're crafting this tone of we're in this together and we need to get this solved together instead of being combative or kicking someone out or creating the situation where they feel like you're telling them, hey, you need to leave. Because that's not going to help anyone out. So to put it simply, there's a few things that you need to do. Communicate clearly and empathetically. Gather all the documents so that everything is in place and there's clarity and understanding between all of the parties. Rely on your professionals. If you need to understand what the home should rent for in the current market, reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you with some comps on that. Also, if you're trying to figure out how to get someone who is maybe a caregiver who was hired who decided to let themselves live there and now they're trespassing in the place, you may need to lean on your estate planning attorney, you may need to lean on your estate planning attorney to help get them out with a wrongful detainer. Don't jump to that situation. Try and solve it peacefully, though, because the more clarity you have, the better conversations you have, the more peace that you cultivate within yourself can go forward to that person and help find a resolution that's more peaceful, faster, and costs less money. I've seen families lose thousands of dollars and tons of time just because they're fighting over who's allowed to stay in the home, who's responsible for what, who pays for what bills, the maintenance. It gets really messy. And I've created this video to help you get some kind of roadmap on that. But if you need further help on this, I offer a free clarity call. It's confidential, 30 minutes long, and takes place over Zoom. You or any of the beneficiaries are welcome to join, and we could go over all of the options for the home and help you understand what it looks like to have that as a rental, what it looks like to sell it, or what it looks like to just chill out, process everything, and do absolutely nothing. You'll clearly see all of your options on one line so that you know how they affect you, and it will help other beneficiaries involved understand how this whole process affects them and their future. Keep in mind that grief is hard and challenging, but dealing with the house and the estate doesn't have to be.